The river you're looking at is the Wabash. Ain't she pretty? Of course, it isn't as big as the Mississippi nor as picturesque as the Hudson. And there aren't any big cities like New York or New Orleans on it. Still, Logansport and Lafayette are mighty nice towns. Booth Tarkington and James Whitcomb Riley mention it a lot. And the song Paul Dresser made up about its banks will live as long as there are any Hoosiers alive to sing it. My forebears, the Stewarts, settled on its banks in 1799, and Stewarts have lived beside it ever since. But the reason I'm talking about it is that Purdue University's on it, and Purdue's the greatest... But here I'm bragging about my alma mater before I even get Indiana settled. My granddaddy often told me how it all happened. The East was full of land-hungry people, and the great Mississippi Valley full of the land they longed for. So, after the Northwest Ordinance was signed in 1787, Granddaddy and thousands of other folks' ancestors poured into this Midwestern frontier. Almost before a man could catch his breath, the wilderness was fenced into farms. And before he could say Jack Robinson, here were 5 great states. A few of the pioneers were graduates of Eastern colleges. Granddad was Princeton, 1788. A lot more were set and determined their sons should have college educations. Consequently, Indiana University dates back to 1820, while Iowa and Wisconsin were founded in 1848. More was started after Mr. Lincoln took time out from running the war to sign the Morrill Act in 1862. That measure donated public lands to states that would build colleges where farm boys could learn how to raise bigger and better crops. Purdue is a typical example of these land-grant colleges. Granddad was a smart old coot, like all us Stewarts. He showed it by not being satisfied with any of the land he saw till he reached northwest Indiana. There he found some close to this old blockhouse near the battlefield of Tippecanoe, where General William Henry Harrison licked the breechclouts off the Indians and was elected president for doing it. You remember Tippecanoe and Tyler, too, the hard cider campaign of 1840. Here's the monument that now marks the battlefield. When enough other pioneers had joined Granddaddy, they started a city and named it after the French general, Lafayette. That's John Purdue, who was the big man of the town. He was a bachelor and wanted an heir to carry on his name. So he offered to chip in $100,000 and a lot of land if Indiana's land-grant college was erected in Lafayette and named after him. The legislature agreed, and Purdue was opened in 1874, like Ohio State had been in 1870 and Illinois in 1867. It wasn't a very big punkin at the beginning. There were only 3 buildings, and besides President Shortridge, just the same number of professors to teach me and the other 38 students. There were no athletics nor proms, and the only social event of the college year was the annual sophomore picnic on the banks of the Wabash.
From my Indiana homestead waved the cornfield. In the distance loomed the woodlands, clear and cool. Oftentimes my thoughts revert to scenes of childhood, when I first received my lessons, nature's school.
That's me with, doggone, I plumb forgot her name, but she was the prettiest girl in town.
Without her face, it seems so incomplete.
Them 4 and false mustaches was the college cut-ups.
As she stood there years ago, her boy to greet. Oh, the moonlight's fair tonight along the Wabash.
I told her there'd be ants in the sandwiches like at all picnics, but she was set on going ashore.
Through the sycamores, the candle lights are gleaming on the banks of the Wabash, far away.
Don't I look like something the cat dragged in? I sure got razzed to a fare thee well by the gang. Worst of all, her pa said I wasn't to be trusted with a canoe and forbade her going out in one with me again. After I graduated, the college got a chance to grow, and it did. Presidents came and went. Finally, we got James H. Smart, and he lived up to his name. In '94, he worked Mr. Amos Haviland for a new engineering building that was a beaut, the finest of its kind in the whole country. Then, just 4 days after its dedication, dog blame me, it burned to the ground. We worked hard all night and failed to save it. So next morning, we were blowing indigo, all but President Smart. That very day, he called a meeting in the chapel. He told how Haviland Hall had embodied the hopes and plans of years, how it represented a fixed determination to make Purdue the leading school of engineering in the country. Had these hopes been destroyed? No.
We'll rebuild it. Yes. And we'll build it 1 brick higher.
And by gum, not only was it rebuilt 1 brick higher inside of a year, but Jim Smart's pledge became the motto of the university. John Purdue can rest easy in his grave on the campus, knowing the whole plant could be wiped out by an earthquake or atomic bomb tomorrow. And the very next day, we'd start rebuilding it, 1 brick higher. In the library are mementos of some of these graduates. Among them were John McCutcheon, the great cartoonist. George Ade, who wrote the librettos of all those comic operas, and also those famous fables and slang. And Bruce Rogers, one of America's most distinguished book designers. But our most famous alumnus was David Ross, at least as far as the university is concerned. He was born and raised right here in Tippecanoe County and graduated in 1893, from Purdue, of course. Now he's buried on the campus like John Purdue. While living, he began his career inventing steering gears for what they then called horseless carriages. He kept on inventing one thing after another till he'd made a hatful of money. Then he sort of adopted Purdue and kept on being its Dutch uncle till he died. By then, he was president of the Board of Trustees. I'll show you some of the many things he gave the university as we go along. But first, I want to tell you of his idea of what a college should be. Dave was a great believer in research, but not the kind done by chemists working for the big industries. No, that's not it exactly. It was more like.
Better let me take it up from here, Gramps.
Well, I reckon I'd best. Go ahead, grandson.
Dave believed a university's sole purpose was to develop brains, to teach students to think. If that was accomplished, they were prepared, after graduation, to solve any technical, scientific, or agricultural problem which confronted them. What modern college president does not agree he was right? Moreover, that it is not what a student studies, nor how successfully he masters the subject that is of primary importance. It is what study does to his brain that really matters. I'm a publisher of textbooks and visit many colleges throughout the nation, and the same thing is true of them all. However, we're here at Purdue, my old school, so let's see what it is doing to improve the human race. It's a pretty campus, isn't it? As honored visitors, you rate our Class A welcome. So let us go to the music hall and receive it from the Glee Club, directed by the distinguished Al Sturrett. Modern university is a business of great magnitude. Its budget is equaled only by those of the largest business corporations. So come to the executive building and meet Dr. F.L. Hovde, the youngest and one of the best-liked presidents Purdue has ever had.
How do you do? Purdue University is devoted to training young men and women in the professions of science and to meet their responsibilities as citizens. The major problem of the times confronting all men everywhere is the problem of governing ourselves as individuals, as members of a group, as a nation, as one world. No man-made institution so influences our day-to-day existence or so affects our welfare as does our government. The only necessary war is the war against the forces of nature, against disease, against ignorance, against prejudice and evil. War between men is sheer stupidity. Today, louder than ever before, the world cries for wise leadership, lest it destroy itself. Because they represent the best among our people in capacity, talent, and promise, university men and women must be trained to provide that leadership.
One of the primary purposes of the land-grant colleges was the improvement of agriculture, to give American farmers scientific knowledge that would increase both their crops and the fertility of their soil. The Midwestern universities have done this successfully. For just one item, the researches into wheat rust at Purdue have saved farmers untold millions. In the early days of the Republic, farmers did not know how to renew their exhausted soil. So there was a constant westward migration in search of virgin fields. Research has developed proper fertilizers and machinery for planting and harvesting the crops. Graduates of the land-grant colleges have spread the knowledge gained in the classrooms, laboratories, and the findings of the experimental stations throughout the entire nation. Purdue, like other land-grant colleges, has splendid herds of cattle. Part of the milk they yield is taken into Smith Hall for scientific tests and so that the students may be instructed in the making of ice cream, butter, and other dairy products. The members of the extension staff give over 1,000 demonstrations each year. Here is one group explaining to several hundred farmers the results of experimental trials in fattening beef on various pasturages. Thus, Purdue is truly taking the university to the people. Another generous gift to Purdue was the Linwood farm, now used for experimental purposes. Pigs are one of the crops raised on it. Contented pigs. Also sheep.
What's that dog, grandson? Ain't he smart enough to be in the movies? That's right, boy. Turn 'em. Hey, there's one trying to skedaddle. That does it. Good dog. They're my favorite animal.
I thought horses were. Last year at the state fair.
Those was goats I bet on, not horses. Nothing like these fine portraits.
A century ago, it was possible for one man to be conversant with all fields of science. Today, he must spend years to master one of the hundreds of subdivisions. Mechanical engineering, for example. Here in the building dedicated to that sphere of knowledge, students learn to build and test motors and to experiment with the fuels and oils which run them. Any discoveries thus made are of vital importance to the entire world, since the internal combustion engine, with electricity and rubber, are the three atlases on which modern civilization rests. Without them, such giant airplanes as this would be impossible. During President Smart's administration, thanks to his foresight, the university acquired a full-size locomotive and various pieces of testing apparatus. The railroads quickly recognized the value of the work. They made Purdue the official tester of all types of brakes and gears. So today, trains cross the continent more safely because of the ceaseless testing and experimentation done by Purdue students. David Ross early recognized that flying was the ultimate goal in transportation. Before any other university possessed a flying field, he presented one to Purdue. On it, Amelia Earhart trained for her famous flights, and from it, many young pilots went to join the Army and Navy Air Corps. A pilot finds pleasure in flying almost as fast as sound, yet the use of legs has not gone out of fashion. Hiking means blisters and reminds us of the old-fashioned pharmacy whose sole business was compounding and selling prescriptions instead of electrical supplies, bathing caps, and barbecued sandwiches. Today, the profession demands the same painstaking precision as yesterday. In fact, with the host of new drugs which research has created, the pharmacist's knowledge must be infinitely greater. He must also master modern methods of compounding them, including pill-making machines. So work vitally important to the national health awaits those who graduate with a degree in pharmacy from our nation's colleges. Like every state university, Purdue has several branches of the ROTC. During the last war, over 100,000 reserve officers from these organizations and colleges from coast to coast served in the armed forces. This cross in the Memorial Union commemorates those who died for their country. It is sacred ground to all Purdue men and women. Above is a plaque honoring those who made the supreme sacrifice in the First World War. Nearby is the Second World War plaque bearing the names of those who lost their lives striving to erect the nation one brick higher. Although women have graduated from each of Purdue's many schools, the greater number have always majored in home economics. After graduation, they have brought the science of the laboratory into the home, supplying new flavors as well as the all-important vitamins to the foods they prepare. While many home economic students are preparing for marriage and motherhood, others expect their diplomas to lead to a career. Their work, like that of the future farmers and embryonic engineers, is done partly in the classroom and partly in the laboratory. But the test tubes they use walk around on two sturdy legs and are as full of pep as exploded atoms. There's a Stewart, class of 1967.
And he's the spitting image of me, freckles and all.
Here's where Purdue houses the married veterans who are taking good advantage of the GI Bill of Rights and raising every class average. Each university has some building which is the center of good fellowship. At Purdue, this is the Memorial Union, erected as a monument to the students who fell in the First World War. These buildings are based on the principle that all work and no play get Jack an A average, but that it also deprives him of the social side of college life. The Union offers many sorts of recreation, but it is far from being a country club since, at Purdue, many classes begin at 7 a.m., and the midnight oil burns in many students' lamps. It also contains many memorials. Almost side by side are those to a departed president and a faithful janitor, proving that Purdue believes it is the service and not the rank which counts.
I've got a question to ask. It's as simple as ABC. After I've mastered astrology, philosophy, psychology, anatomy, why love should still be hard for me. I don't know what love's about, that's a fact. There is no doubt that Cupid should be helping me out, because I want to be loved. People tell me that someday love is sure to come my way, and I'll be hearing symphonies play. That's why I want to be loved. But I'm not sure that I could handle the situation with finesse. And I know it would create a scandal, because I'd say yes. Though I'm dumb, I still contend you could help me comprehend what this business stars of love is about, because I want to be loved. Now I'm telling you, this is the reason, and if it isn't true, you can shoot me for treason. Oh, I swear by the stars above, I want to be loved. There the star was in the sky. Winter winds go wailing by.
But the lights on Father's Road, we're happy and thank God. It's morning, it's morning, it's morning. Morning on the holy hill, where those that for the rill. Morning in the heaven blue, morning in the eyes of
The modern university realizes that a healthy body creates an alert brain. So physical education is an important part of each curriculum. To most male and female students, these are pleasant ways of earning credits. However, the track team not only engages in conference competition, but the annual relays held at Purdue are fast becoming an event of national athletic importance. Coaches Tawby and Schock lead their squad a strenuous life, although college baseball, like the family life of a rhinoceros, is only of interest to teams in the same conference. If it is a strenuous life, it's also a merry one, as the Glee Club now tells us.
Some think the world was made for fun and frolic, and so do I. Some think it was to be a melancholic, to pine and sigh. But I love to spend my time in singing the joyous song. So let the earth with music bravely ringing is far from wrong. Hearken, hearken, music sounds apart. Hearken, hearken, music sounds apart. La 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 la. Joy is everywhere. La 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 la.
Happy is the family in which the children are unable to distinguish which is the best loved. Happy also is the school like Purdue, where the farmer and engineer walk hand in hand together through the joyous fields of knowledge without thought of rivalry. Moreover, students in the College of Civil Engineering, busy with countless tests, know their work of housing the nation is just as important as that of feeding it. Science has entered the building industry. The skyscraper of today is a world away from the log cabin in which Granddad was born. Concrete is an ever more important building material, so students must know its properties before they go out to help the nation conquer the housing shortage. Let us meet Red Mackey, Purdue's athletic director, and meet the famous Stub Holcomb, Purdue's head football coach. Purdue Stadium was the combined gift of David Ross and George Age. For over 50 years, Purdue's teams have been known as the Boilermakers. Victory on the football field calls for a musical celebration.
We have many very interesting personalities in the Purdue Varsity Glee Club. Among them is a very fine director by the name of Bruce McGuire, also known as Mickey. I should like to turn it over to Mickey to conduct one number. All right, Mickey McGuire.
Oh, the deacon went down. It fell to pray. He fell asleep. He fell asleep. They said all day. They say all day. Oh, the deacon went down. He fell to pray. He fell asleep. They say all day. I ain't gonna pray. My Lord no more. I ain't gonna pray. My Lord no more. I ain't gonna pray. Get on the wagon and roll down all the way. All the way home.
I can't go to heaven.
I can't go to heaven.
On a cow like mine.
On a cow like mine.
Won't you have to stop?
You'll have to stop.
More milk is time.
More milk is time.
In the men's gymnasium and field house are held the indoor athletic events. The most important of these are the basketball games. Also the swimming pool where the Dolphins and Tritons display their wares.
Who's the Lollapalooza?
Shh, that's Gene Wilson. What's his pinwheel, Graham? In ancient Greece, a gymnasium was a place where naked men exercised. So the box fighters and grunt and groan boys in another part of the gym would seem horribly overdressed to Hector or Plato. However, they used the same tactics, the same holds, and the same punches as were thrown by Castor when he took the heavyweight championship from Pollux by a TKO in the 1482 BC Olympics. The modern university offers a wide variety of athletics, and each student body contains those of greatly varying tastes. Nor have the choices any connection with mental ability. This champion weightlifter is also an outstanding science student. In countless chemical and physics laboratories, college students are constantly striving to create new dyes, new plastics, new materials, and new forces. In the last decade, scientists have concentrated on the secrets of atomic energy and have learned to create the force that today won a war and tomorrow can wipe out civilization, the atomic bomb.
Forgive us our debt as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory,
Atomic energy has the power of vastly enriching civilization instead of destroying it. The primary purpose of education today must be to harness this mighty force to peaceful purposes and so erect not only America, but the entire world one brick higher. Let us hear this pledged by Vice President and Executive Dean Frank C. Hockema.
When our founding fathers dedicated this nation to the proposition that all men are created equal, they exposed a wrong under which mankind had suffered for more than 5,000 years. At one stroke, they revealed the fallacy of power politics and the tragical absurdity of hereditary rulers, declaring that the only aristocracy is that of culture derived from the right kind of education. They laid the cornerstones of all our schools and universities where men might solve the problems of nature, destiny, and religion in freedom.
The century during which Purdue and the other Midwestern colleges have been in existence has been the most revolutionary in all recorded history. In the short span these universities have been in existence, the phonograph, the dictaphone, the moving picture, the diesel engine, and 1,000 other things have been invented. In the Michael Golden shops, the students who formerly learned only to be blacksmiths are now taught new ways of using old materials. Besides doing classwork, these students go into the field to visit the steel mill and the construction gang to see how the skyscrapers are built. It is an intricate process, but let us learn from the Glee Club of an even more complicated kind of construction than that of a suspension bridge.
Cried them, dry bones, Ezekiel cried them, dry bones, Ezekiel cried them, dry bones, now hear the word of the Lord. Ezekiel connected them, dry bones, Ezekiel connected them, dry bones, Ezekiel connected them, dry bones, now hear the word of the Lord. When you toe bone connected to, foot bone connected to, heel bone connected to, ankle bone connected to, leg bone connected to, knee bone connected to, thigh bone connected to, hip bone connected to, backbone connected to, shoulder bone connected to, neck bone connected to, head bone, now hear the word of the Lord. Them bones gonna walk around, them bones gonna walk around, them bones gonna walk around, now hear the word of the Lord. Disconnect them bones and dry bones, disconnect them bones and dry bones, disconnect them bones and dry bones, now hear the word of the Lord. When your head bone connects from neck bone connects from shoulder bone connects from backbone connects from hip bone connects from thigh bone connects from knee bone connects from leg bone connects from ankle bone connects from heel bone connects from foot bone connects from toe bone, now hear the word of the Lord. Them bones and bones and dry bones and bones and bones and dry bones and bones and bones and dry bones, now hear the word of the Lord. Them bones and bones and dry bones and bones and bones and dry bones and bones and bones and dry bones, now hear the word of the Lord.
This is a thrilling time to be at a university, to have part in a great and epic adventure. In no department at Purdue is this truer than in electrical engineering. Today, electricity is so vital a part of civilization that without it, we would have no transportation, no communication, no power to light our homes and cities, to run our factories, and no X-rays to solve the secrets of disease. Purdue students see this power transferred at the great dams where the turbines turn the rushing water into power. Where day and night, at man's bidding, it becomes electricity. Where, turned into force, it is sent through the high voltage wires to run factories and to turn night into day in our great cities. women's dormitories at Purdue look prosaic in the daytime. However, they change to magical bowers, inhabited by storybook princesses, when night brings a serenade by the Glee Club. Each year at John Purdue's grave, the heads of the university renew their pledge that Purdue will strive to realize the ideals of progress, to raise the general level of well-being, bring all citizens within the range of cooperative life, apply science to the service of mankind and not to its destruction, prepare its students for economic independence, instruct them in the duties of citizenship, instill in them democratic principles, and in every way strive to raise America one brick higher.
I have seen the glory of